7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
And welcome back into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are here. It's Friday. It's NCAA picks time. If you're listening on Saturday, you can get your picks in right here before the games start. Let's thank the sponsors here, since I have an empty studio. No Spike, no Token Tony, and no Tony Johnson. We'll thank the sponsors, and we'll get to the only other person I'm going to be talking to today, because you don't want to hear my dribble just alone. Let's thank the sponsors again. First, 12-ounce Sports puts us on every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where you can get your NCAA football picks and your NFL football picks on Sunday mornings. Seat Giant, promo code 12-ounce Sports, gets you discounts on sporting events, concerts, and theater tickets. Also, Thrive Fantasy, for all your daily fantasy sports needs. Use promo code 12-ounce Sports for a deep discount over there at thrivefantasy.com. And BetSperts, our gambling advice website, where you can enter promo code football35 to get a deep discount off of your gambling advice from BetSperts. It only costs you $3.28 a month. All right, now that we've paid the bills, again, I got an empty studio. No Spike, no Tony Johnson, no Token Tony. They're all out nursing hangovers or maybe working. I don't know which one. But I'm going to bring in somebody who's on the East Coast, who loves college football. He is the host of the Pens Out podcast and the writer for Win Daily. It is Vincent Pensabene. What's up, dude?
How's it going? Glad to be on.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've communicated with each other, but it's always good to hear from you. How's life going on the East Coast?
Good. I just graduated college, so just trying to figure out my life now.
Oh, yeah. We've all been through that. But you know what? The good thing is you got it all ahead of you, man. Congratulations on graduating.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the first thing you're going to do after graduating college is giving us some NCAA picks. Are you ready? Can you handle that?
I think I can.
All right. Again, it is... What week are we in now, it seems? I don't even pay attention to college football weeks, but looks like we're in week 7 of the college football season, and things are starting to take shape. First and foremost, the Heisman race, because every week we talk about it here on the Vegas Squares podcast, and every week we kind of give our pick, and some people's picks have changed, some people's have remained constant. I know Tony Johnson's really got a lot of futures action on Tua Tagovailoa, and obviously he's right there in the mix. I'm still on the Jalen Hurts train, as I think Token Tony is as well. Although I think the next few weeks are going to be eye-openers for all of us who don't have Heisman votes and for those who do. There's a couple other people entering the mix. I want to know for you, Vin, who is, if you had a Heisman vote today, who has your vote?
So I was high on Tua going in, but I think Joe Burrow stole it from me.
Yeah, Joe's been amazing the first five or so weeks. I mean, the LSU offense has put up record numbers for not only their own program, but for SEC type records. They're breaking. I mean, 273 points in the first part of the season here is unheralded, especially for LSU, who traditionally isn't terrific on offense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his QBR, which I'm not a huge fan of, but especially in college. But I mean, it's at 91. It's fourth in the nation. I think he's doing a really good part, and he's a senior. I think he has the experience. He's seen pretty much everything you can see in a college defense. I think it's hard to game plan against him, and he's taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and I've said this before on the podcast. I mean, you know, ever since he got his bell rung in that Fiesta Bowl against UCF, it's almost like he just flipped a switch, a light came on, and he's been unstoppable. And I don't disagree with that. I could see definitely Joe Burrow being in New York come Heisman time. What about Trevor Lawrence? I mean, obviously, you know, after the national championship game last year, we were ready to crown him into the NFL Hall of Fame. And I would say he's come back down to earth a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely come back down to earth a little bit. His touchdown interception is a little staggering to me. I mean, it's 8 touchdowns, 5 picks. And I think that weighs in a little bit too much going into Heisman. But I think he's still been a pretty good quarterback. I think he's still going to be taken first round if he declares. Well, when he declares, I should say.
Right.
And I think he's still going to be a pretty good quarterback. I mean, Clemson's still doing pretty good overall. And Yeah, I mean, he's come down to earth a little bit. So I think that's just a little bit of a concern to me.
Yeah, and I mean, as a fan, and especially someone who likes, watching the Heisman kind of, be the roller coaster that it is up and down, I like the fact that, it seemed like the media bias was ready to just hand it to him, and I like the fact that I'm not rooting against the guy per se, but I like the fact that he has let other people kind of come into the conversation through, an average season. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks who are in college would probably kill for the season he's having, but, that's not how it works as far as when you're given the title like guys like him and LeBron James. You got to kind of grasp it and run from there. So it's going to be an interesting one because there's nothing definitely stopping Trevor Lawrence from winning it. All he has to do is just probably play average football, in my opinion. But sometimes that's easier said than done. So, all right, well, without further ado, let's get into the games. Again, this is Week 7. We'll start with the early games, 9 a.m. on my coast, noon on your coast. And we'll get into we'll start with an American Conference battle. And that's number 20 Memphis versus Temple in Philadelphia. Current line right now we have is Memphis as a 6-point favorite on the road. To me, this is the battle for the American Conference. I mean, I know they're both in different divisions in the American, but Temple really can't afford to take a conference loss with Cincinnati. As good as they are, they still have to go play UCF, although they have 2 losses. They have 1 conference loss. They're still in the mix for the division and eventually the conference. Memphis seems like it's running away with everything, 5-0 with 1-0 in the American, but they've only played 1 American game, so this is a big game for both. Memphis is basically, put on an offensive explosion after the season opener against Ole Miss. Everybody thought, they beat an SEC opponent, but they didn't score much. This would be a tough year for them, but they went on to go 55, 42, 35, and 52 over the next 4 games. So I'd say there's no shortage of, even with Darrell Henderson gone, no shortage of offense in Memphis. This line seems a little fishy to me. I mean, to me, Temple is a really good team. They had a stumble against Buffalo a couple weeks ago, but they've beaten East Carolina and Georgia Tech in their last few meetings. And what are your thoughts on this game? I mean, Memphis has given up basically a touchdown on the road. Brady White has been amazing for the Memphis Tigers, but this line seems a little fishy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in with you on that. I think the line's a little too big for me. Even going before the Buffalo loss, they beat a ranked Maryland at the time by a field goal. I think that this Temple team is still a pretty good team. I think they could be a lower 20 ranked team by the end of the year. I think that the spread is a little too big for me. If I were to bet it, which I don't think I would on this game, I think I would have to go with the Temple plus. But, I mean, it's still a pretty decent game. I know this is Temple's homecoming because I have a few friends at Temple.
Nice.
But I think Russo's going to carry them to stay competitive in this game. And I think that it's just going to be a field goal difference. I don't think it's going to be anything too lopsided.
Yeah, I got to tend to agree with you there. Anthony Russo has been pretty well, but he without Ramon Davis, who's been pretty good, especially at 157 and a TD last week against ECU. I think the key for Temple is going to be ball control and time of possession. Their defense obviously plays well, but the more they stay fresh, the better they're going to be. Because I mean, Memphis, that defense gets tired. Memphis is just going to walk up and down the field. I tend to agree with you in this spot. I think Temple plus 6 is probably the play here. Like you said, a home game for them, getting basically a touchdown here. I think Temple plus 6, maybe a little bit on the money line, would be a nice spot here for them, and put them in a driver's seat because all they got to do is just keep on winning. That East Division seems wide open because they got to go through Cincy and they got to go through UCF, and it's they can do it. I mean, look, I'm a UCF guy, but UCF has shown that there's a blueprint to beat them, and so Cincinnati has already done it, and obviously Pittsburgh's done it. We know about that, but Temple's got the team that can do it as well and put themselves in the driver's seat, especially with this win over Memphis, would be huge for that program, especially since Manny Diaz kind of left them, I wouldn't say in shambles. There was obviously still a great program there, but Manny Diaz was pulling the old switcheroo, kind of probably gives them a little fuel for the fire there. So I like Temple plus 6 as well. in that spot. A little bit of sprinkle on the money line. All right, let's move forward. Michigan at Illinois. Michigan has won, I believe, 5 straight against Illinois in this rivalry, and they're also looking for their 3rd consecutive win since getting their doors blown off by Wisconsin. I was wondering how Michigan would rebound after that beating, and they've done, to me, just fine. I mean, Iowa, the 10-3, obviously the offensive struggles in that game are well documented, but they beat Rutgers 52-0, and the line right here is 21.5 in favor of the Wolverines. I personally don't know if I can trust the total's 49. I don't know if I can trust the Wolverines with that big of a number. But I also said the same thing against Rutgers, and it was 52-0. But this team's a little better than Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, this team definitely is a little better than Rutgers, in my opinion, as well. But from all I've heard is that this offense is looking good in between weeks. That this Michigan offense is just playing a lot better. I think some of that game last week was Iowa's defense, not just their offense staggering. And, I mean, this is a Illinois team that's giving up 20.5 points a game. So I think as long as they can shut down the defense, or as long as they can shut down on defense, I think Michigan can really put up a big number.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like everything you hear is during practice, the spread offense, they look good in the spread offense, but every time in the game, again, except with the exception of Rutgers, they look a little confused. I mean, Shea Patterson, 147 and a pick over Iowa, and I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Iowa's defense, like you said, is pretty stout. We're going to not see McCaffrey for 3 straight games here. He got that concussion in the Wisconsin game, and you're right. Something has to click at this point because I don't know about where you guys are in the country, but I'm starting to hear rumors about maybe replacing Jim Harbaugh, which part of me seems like it's crazy. But you know what? I don't know how many years he's been there. It's got to be at least 5. I can see the not winning the big game. I mean, those rumors are going to obviously swirl again if they lose to Ohio State or quote unquote when they lose to Ohio State. Well, Ohio State's just a fucking juggernaut. But Jim Harbaugh, you can't give away games like these. The Wisconsin, I understand. They're going to probably end up being here in the playoff discussion, especially because that defense in Wisconsin is ridiculously good. But, yeah, I mean, I can understand the Ohio State loss. I can understand the Wisconsin loss, but you can't lose these kind of games, especially after Illinois. And even keeping them close now, I think Michigan's in that spot where they need sexy wins. And I know that that's, not the term the College Football Playoff Committee will use, but convincing wins are what Michigan needs to stay alive and obviously, to beat Ohio State. But, Michigan's now in that camp where you need to win appropriately. You don't have the benefit of the doubt like Alabama or like Clemson. Clemson, yes, they did drop a spot for a 1-point victory, but, some teams might fall 3 or 4, but not Clemson. But Michigan, I think, is in that camp. What do you think?
Yeah, I think exactly. Michigan has to win these games, and they have to win it very convincingly at this point. Especially if they want to make it to a playoff discussion. They're 4-1 right now. They're 2-1 in their conference, but they have to just start winning sexy. They can't be winning games 10-3, even though it's against Iowa.
Right.
You have to be winning by 20+ points against, especially teams like Illinois,
right,
and teams of that stature.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this series, the over is 4-1 in the last 5 games, and the underdog is 5-1 in the last 6 meetings. So it'll be an interesting thought. I mean, I gotta imagine if Illinois has any chance of covering that spread and or keeping it competitive with Michigan, the over's got to be in play in that spot, and so we'll see. We'll see what happens. The road team also is 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 meetings, so that obviously favors the Wolverines. So a lot of trends kind of going in all different directions in this matchup. It'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, let's move on to South Carolina traveling to Athens to face the Georgia Bulldogs. And it's crazy to see, and I've said this for weeks now, it's just crazy to me to tell me, the SEC is the most dominant conference, top to bottom, which, one, I don't believe. But then to see a USC versus Georgia game that's a 24-point spread. You know what I'm saying? It's just to sit there and tell me these kind of things. You can't say top to bottom. You maybe say the top 3 or 4 teams. I'll give you the respect because they absolutely are. I mean, the polls show it. But I mean, you have a third-ranked Georgia team that walks in here and is going to get the Super Bowl from every team in its division. I mean, South Carolina's going to give them everything they have at this point. And, Tennessee did it, I believe, was it last week? Tennessee did it last week. It was 14-10 in the first half, and obviously we know that finished 43-14. I mean, Jake Fromm has been my dark horse Heisman candidate. I have future bets on him as of right now. He has to look better for 60 minutes, in my opinion. He looks really good in the second half, which is really good for a quarterback, especially moving on to the next level. But I think UGA has yet to really put together a full, complete 60-minute beatdown with the exception of Arkansas State so far. And, I mean, Arkansas State is Arkansas State. Let's not get that wrong. But they're going to have to face Florida coming up, and if they beat Florida, they're obviously going to have to face a tough Missouri team, and they're going to have to play in an SEC championship game. So they've got to start figuring out how to put together 60 minutes of football. The line right now is 24. Let's see what the total is. We got a 52.5 total that's come down from 54. Again, ATS, Georgia's 3-2, but they are 3-0 at home here straight up, and they face South Carolina, who's kind of banged up.
Yeah. I do like Jake Fromm as well as a dark horse candidate. I think the real story of this game is going to be DeAndre Swift, if he can start getting going against this.
Sure.
I really do think that this Georgia team is one of the best teams in the nation, obviously with number 3 ranking on them, but I think the team is scary. They put up points and they don't give up any. It's really hard to score against them at times. They only give up less than 60 yards rushing a game, which in college football is incredible. And, I mean, if you could just get a solid game from Jake Fromm, I don't see any worry of trying to get this, get the spread on their side. I think that with just basically, as you were saying, the USP is going to just play this as a Super Bowl game. I think that they're going to be thrown in mistakes, and I think Jordan's only covered at 22.5.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, everybody thought when Jake Bentley went down in the season opener against UNC that their season was kind of over, and obviously they're 2-3, and they're obviously probably out of the SEC race, barring craziness. A win here would be obviously huge, but I mean, Tyler Helinski's brother, Ryan Helinski, has passed for 912 yards and 5 touchdowns, completing 65% of his passes. I mean, like you say, these Super Bowl games for like South Carolina and Vanderbilt and others. Obviously, Vanderbilt wasn't competitive with Georgia, but these guys are getting their A-plus game, and I think one of these games is going to put Georgia into a competitive dogfight. I'm of the opinion that South Carolina can hang within the 3-touchdown number. I've already laid a bet on South Carolina plus the points. That's a lot of points to me for two teams that are pretty similar to each other, and Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart are two guys who know each other very well, and especially with all their times around the SEC together, at Tennessee, or excuse me, not Tennessee, at Florida, and when Kirby Smart was at Alabama. So I think we stay within the 3-touchdown number here. I'm thinking somewhere around 41-24. I don't know if Georgia's really tested, but I think they kind of keep themselves at arm's length with South Carolina, just far enough where it's not a competitive game. But I think I think South Carolina stays within the number at this point. But it'd be a good game, I think. So let's
one of the better games on the afternoon slate.
I agree with that, but I think the best game is the one we're about to talk about right now, and that's the old Red River rivalry. Man, say that 5 times fast. You got OU and you got Texas. Obviously, Texas is 4-1. The only loss to that LSU program, who we'll talk about them later. And then you got Oklahoma, who's 5-0. Haven't really gotten tested as far as big matchups. They did have Texas Tech, which is probably the best game they've played, or the best team they've played against so far, in my opinion. But they handled them easily as well. So I think this is obviously the first test for Jalen Hurts, and I've said I'm on the Jalen Hurts Heisman train. Texas plays really good defense. I mean, that's obviously been the MO for them, but Sam Ehlinger's come along. I mean, I thought Sam Ehlinger at the beginning of the year might have been a dark horse candidate. I don't know if he's probably still in play for that. But a big game against OU might change a lot of people's minds about that. The line currently is Oklahoma favored by 10.5, and we have a total of 75.5, a huge total. They're expecting points out of these two teams, and I don't blame them. I mean, Vegas is obviously usually a smarter man than I. So I'm going to default to you on this one because I don't officially have a play on this side because everything leans Oklahoma because they've just been able to run by everybody. And Texas, who has won their first two Big 12 contests by a total of 17 points against West Virginia and was it TCU? I forget who else they played, but they definitely don't look like they have the manpower to stay in this, but we looked at it last year. They beat them in the Red River Rivalry, or they're calling it the Showdown now. I don't know why they do that. I thought it was the Red River Rivalry. They're calling it the Red River Showdown, the 115th edition. Last year, Texas was able to get the better of OU.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the quarterback's going to be the main marquee of this matchup for Jalen Hurts and Sam Ehlinger. I think that what Jalen Hurts has been able to show so far this season is incredible. Coming out of Alabama, where the quarterback situation's usually not of a huge program, and going to an Oklahoma and just being able to air it out, something that Nick Saban usually doesn't do, is something that really helped Jalen Hurts going down the line. This is a game I'm actually calling an upset for. So I think Texas is going to end up winning this. I think that it's just going to be a huge scoring game of Vegas is saying with their 70-something points that they're putting up. But this is going to be a fun, high-scoring game. And I just think that with the home being at home is going to be a big factor. And Ehlinger hasn't really made mistakes. Neither has Jalen Hurts, but I just think right now I have a little bit more confidence in Ehlinger.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way Ehlinger played against LSU. I thought he had a pretty decent game, all things considered, even though they lost that game. Honestly, you would have if you threw these two quarterbacks in front of me with a blind slate and just let me watch them practice, I think I like Ehlinger better as a quarterback at the next level. I mean, Ehlinger definitely gets up for this game. In his 3 games against Oklahoma, he has totaled a total offense of 391, 386, and 384 yards. That is the highest output by a Texas quarterback ever in this rivalry. So obviously we know that Ehlinger gets up for this game, but he's going to have a big test. I mean, Oklahoma's been playing defense this year. They're only giving up 19 points per game. Again, we've seen some of the teams they played. You know, Houston obviously, 5 weeks into the season, obviously we see they're effectively a tanking college program. But, at the time we expected a lot out of the University of Houston. UCLA is obviously kind of a dumpster fire right now. But you can't slack on the Oklahoma defense. They've played well. They played well against Kansas. It's a tough one. I can't find really an angle to take a spot. I probably lean with you. I mean, 11 points is a lot, and like I said, Ehlinger is always up for this game. So I'm gonna side with you. I'm gonna take 11 points. I don't know if I'm calling for the upset, but you give me 11 points in a rivalry game, and I'm usually going to take it 99 times out of 100, so I'm with you on that spot. So, all right, so let's move into the afternoon games, unless you've got any action on any of the other morning games.
No, I'm all good.
All right, let's move into the first game we have is Michigan State against that Wisconsin team we talked about a little earlier. To me, 10.5 is the line right now. 40 is the total for the over-under. To me, the way Wisconsin's playing and the way Michigan State is playing, this line of 10 or 10.5, depending on where you see it, it seems a little bit fishy to me. I mean, all signs point to Wisconsin being able to basically do all the heavy lifting in this game. I mean, you have Jonathan Taylor, who, what else needs to be said about him? He's going to be obviously really great at the next level. You have Jack Cohn, who's coming along. But, Michigan State still has that defense. And I'm guessing that Michigan State's defense has probably been the reason that this line is closer, even though they are averaging 27.8 points per game, giving up in the Big Ten. So, again, Vegas is smarter than I. This line seems like Wisconsin should roll by 30. But, it's hard to count Mark D'Antonio and his Michigan State squad out anytime it's Big 10 football.
Yeah, I mean, just look at their defense, especially. I mean, they're giving them under 6 points a game. It's going to be hard for Michigan State to move the ball, in my opinion. And coming off of a loss against Ohio State last week, I think it's going to be more of the same, where we're just going to struggle to move the ball, not really get much going. But I do think that Wisconsin's going to win. I don't think it's going to be a steamroll. I think it's going to be a two-possession game. And I really do like this matchup. I think it's going to be one of the more fun matchups on this afternoon slate.
That's an interesting thought process, considering these teams are boring football.
Yeah. I think it's going to be one of the closer games.
Right on.
So, and then I'm more interested in seeing how Wisconsin plays, see if they are going to be in the conversation in a month or so for the playoffs. I think this is going to be essentially a prove-it game for them.
That's fair.
Show what you can do. And if you're Wisconsin, I think you have to want to win this convincingly. I mean, your offense is really good. Your defense is incredible. And just prove why you're the 8th and why you should be in the top 4 in the next 2 months.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we talk about Wisconsin. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, Wisconsin was undefeated, lost the conference title game to Ohio State. I want to say that was like 2 or 3 years ago, and they were shut out. I mean, the playoff committee could do the same thing with this. I mean, you could honestly argue without Michigan, who have they played? They haven't really played anybody of great merit, and many people aren't even giving Michigan that kind of credit right now. I mean, off the top of my head, they've played, USF, they've played Kent State, they've played Michigan, they've played Central Michigan. So, I mean, you're talking about, I don't want to say cupcakes because some of those teams have a pulse, but, you're talking about, a team that a lot of people, especially a lot of P5, what I like to call ball washers, will say they haven't played anybody yet. So this is definitely, I would agree with you, this is definitely a contest that, again, if this game stays close, what are the whispers or the rumors start to talk about Wisconsin? I really think the big key here is finding the right number. If you can find 10.5, if you can find 10 for Wisconsin, I think you got to take it, maybe even by a hook. If you like Michigan State, if you can find Michigan State at 10.5, I think this game could fall around that 10 number. It would be an interesting, especially with the fact that both teams' kicking game has not been that great this year. So I think maybe field goals, extra points may be a topic of the way this game finishes. So I think finding the right number here in this spot, just looking at the odds right now, in Vegas, Westgate has 10.5, but if you're anywhere around the country, DraftKings has it at 9. So if you like Wisconsin and you're not in Vegas, DraftKings might be the way to go. If you're in Vegas and you like Michigan State, you might want to check out the Westgate. Again, finding the right number might be a real spot a real good spot, because again, the number can move and it gets dangerous. Or Wisconsin wins by 40 and then you bought a half a point for no reason. You never really quite know with Wisconsin. But like you said, I think you're right. I think this is kind of the show me statement game to begin what looks like the quote-unquote second half of Wisconsin season, where we start getting into the discussion, where the playoff committee starts discussing. I think they're starting here in about 3 weeks, so Wisconsin would do well to win this game by a few touchdowns. So, all right, let's move on to Wazoo facing Arizona State. We have an interesting Pac-12 noon Pacific time game. That doesn't happen very often, but this is an interesting game, especially for the Pac-12, if they have any hopes of making a statement for the college football playoff. I think Arizona State can't afford to lose this game, because that would put them at 2 losses, along with most everybody in the Pac-12, with the exception of Utah. And again, I don't know if the College Football Committee loves Utah as much as some of the guys on this show do, but Arizona State has to continue to play big with the Pac-12 having any chance, because Washington State obviously has already lost to, Washington State's already lost to Utah as well. So they're pretty much out of the equation at 0-2 in the Pacific, the Pac-12. But we have a very close line. Arizona State at home is only a 1-point favorite. I mean, even though Washington State's 3-2, they are no slouch. They have 5 guys who each have 20 receptions: Patton, Arconato, Martin, Borghi, and Winston Jr. So they definitely can spread the ball around. The question will be Arizona State, who plays a really, really good defense. The question is can they slow down this attack?
Yeah, I think they will. In hindsight, I think they're going to end up doing it. I think the way I viewed this Washington State program changed from that UCLA game a couple weeks ago.
What a game!
Yeah, that game was incredible, but it just seemed like they were just building something, and then they just collapsed in that second half. And I think they're still feeling the ramifications of it. There would be it would have been 4-0 going into that Utah game.
Correct.
And then making a big push for this conference. But yeah, I think Arizona State's gonna take this game. I would take the point and do that. I think Arizona's played some pretty good teams. They played some pretty good teams. They played Michigan State and they played Cal in the past handful of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're gonna prove that they're still a pretty good defensive team, and they can put up the points to pick up this win.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Herm Edwards, basically the story of his tenure is close football games. 12 of his first 18 games have been decided by 7 points or less, and they are 10-2 in those games. So it's a good spot for Herm Edwards. He plays, he can play good football. He gets his team motivated. I mean, like the turnaround he's gotten this team so far has been nothing short of amazing. I think Arizona State had been virtually, even with Brock Osweiler at quarterback, many moons ago, they still kept, virtual irrelevancy in the Pac-12. I like Arizona State in this spot too. I think a quick, a close field goal to 5-point game, somewhere around 31-27 in that range. I think Arizona State's just good enough. And the fact that they're at home, I think, makes it a lot better. But, again, Washington State is going to be dangerous. I think this game stays close, stays back and forth, and it wouldn't shock me if Washington State won this game. But Washington State winning this game might be the nail in the coffin, with the exception. You got Oregon and you have Utah, and I'm not sure if the playoff committee is going to love the fact that Oregon lost to Auburn, especially if it's in the beginning, especially only because it's in the beginning of the season. But still, the fact of the matter is I think the playoff committee, even before they've already met, is already ready to write the Pac-12 off of the playoff. So, especially also with Notre Dame potentially taking another spot. So, all right, let's move.
I agree with that.
Yeah, well, Notre Dame obviously always will throw the wrinkle in there because they are independent. So, you talk about 4 spots for 5 conferences plus Notre Dame, it's always going to make for, the chatter I feel like that's what they want. So, let's move forward. Cincinnati is given 7.5 on the road to Houston, who seems like, I guess they're just in tank mode, which is weird for a college team, but their starting quarterback and starting receiver have both decided to redshirt. And obviously there's rumors that D'Eriq King will transfer. Florida State's been high on that list there. But Cincinnati is looking to basically position himself. They are, they are 4-1 with the one American Conference win against Central Florida. So that's obviously putting them in the driver's seat of the American because they've beaten a team that, is always going to be tough. Again, we talked about Central Florida earlier. They're going to have some say in it. They need Cincinnati to obviously lose 2 conference games for them to win out. But for right now, Cincy's in the driver's seat in the American East with Temple before they match up. They've got Houston. They can't overlook this team because even without D'Eriq King, what's his name? Clayton Tune, the sophomore, he threw for 124 yards and a touchdown, and he ran for 100 yards against North Texas last week. And, they're still not a slouch. They still have playmakers in Houston, and these guys are probably looking to play upset football. I mean, they're probably out of the American Conference with Memphis in the West. Tulane's already beat them in that epic game. I don't know if you saw that one, but Houston's probably out of the American Conference discussion unless they can run the table. And they have won 10 of their last 11 conference home openers. I don't think this is a game that Cincinnati can take lightly, despite the fact that De'Aaron King's not playing this game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This isn't a game that Cincinnati can take lightly. I think that this is going to be a Houston team that they'll look really weak compared to what they could have looked like this season. What you said, they had their few redshirt guys, but this team still could pull off an upset at home. I know on ESPN, their matchup predictor, there's only 59% chance that Cincinnati wins. So they're telling it's going to be a close game. And Cincinnati hasn't fully impressed me yet.
Yeah, I think you take a look at their two big games. Obviously, Ohio State, they got their doors blown in, but Desmond Ridder got hurt in that game. So you can't really, you have to throw that one out the window. And I think their other best game was against UCF. And, as good as they looked, you kind of gotta regress that to the median. They start playing teams, in the American, you're going to have, some strong teams. And I think they're going to be, while I think they're going to win this game, I'm going to take Houston in the points at home. I think a lot of these guys in Houston still have something to play for, and God forbid they do run the table. They could be looking at an appearance in the. How crazy would that be? I mean, you look at the team who everybody's considering the fact that they're tanking in college. I mean, it's the first time I've ever heard that word in college football, tanking. But it's the way that the new rules are set up. I mean, if you start out of the gate slow, just redshirt your stars. But I still think there's enough playmakers on this team to keep it close. Cincinnati ultimately will prevail, in my opinion, but I got to say, I think 7.5 points at home for Houston. Dana Holgerson's a good coach. I'm gonna take the points in that spot. But Cincinnati, I think, is a really good team. They're 23rd in the nation in total defense, so that'll be tough. I would lean towards the under in this spot. 51.5 is right now. It started at 55. It's already come down 3.5 points. So I think the trends are looking the way I'm looking as well. So I think the under in this spot, I think you're looking at somewhere around maybe like a 24-20 kind of game in favor of Cincinnati. So it'll be an interesting one. I mean, a lot of people who don't follow the American, you're missing some good teams. I think it's one of the better conferences as far as matchups go. So let's move forward to Clemson versus Florida State, and this is an interesting thing. I mean, you got Florida State, this is the biggest underdog they've ever been in the history of their football program, 27.5 points. It actually started at 24, so it's moved 3.5 points. The over-under's moved down 2 points to 59.5. Clemson has won 20 straight conference games, second all-time only to Florida State's 29. So there's that. I don't know if the players at Florida State really care about snapping that streak, but there is a little bit of added motivation to make sure that Florida State keeps that 29-game winning streak in the record books as the best all-time in conference. But the last time we saw Clemson, it was a 1-point victory over the North Carolina. So it hasn't been, like you said, it's been a very roller coastery season, even though Clemson's still 5-0 and 3-0 in the conference. I mean, they've looked fantastic at times. They've got depth for days. I mean, Travis Etienne has been dominant. The defense is averaging 12 points a game scoring, and fourth in the nation in pass defense at just 150 yards. They have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in the last 27 games. But at the same time, I mean, Florida State's been playing decent football lately. I mean, nothing to suggest that they're back. The conundrum I'm in here is the fact that Florida State's going to employ what I call the kiss of death, and that's the two-quarterback system. I've only ever seen the two-quarterback system work once, and that was Florida with Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. I have never seen it be successful any other time after that. But, Willie Taggart is going to do what Willie Taggart's going to do.
Yeah, I'm a big believer if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback.
Okay.
So I'm not a big fan of the two-quarterback system. I think the points are I think if you're giving up too much on this, so if I would have bet this game, I would do the plus for Florida State. I know this Clemson's defense is great, but I mean, coming off of what they showed against UNC, I don't think Florida State's that different than a UNC team overall wise. So I could see this game being close, a lot closer than the 20-something points that the spread is. But Trevor Lawrence has to show up if he wants to continue to be one of those big names in this Heisman race. I think this is the game he has to show up and have a huge game. And I mean, this defense though is going to keep this at least a chance for Clemson to take this big blowout win. But I don't see it officially happening.
Yeah, I mean, obviously last year Florida State was a completely different squad. They were in shambles, and Clemson rolled in 59-10 and just blew the doors off. But you're right. I also tend to subscribe to the theory of the two quarterbacks equals no quarterbacks. But both quarterbacks, I mean, statistically have played well. I mean, Blackman, 970 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. Hornibrook in 2 games has 571, 5 touchdowns and 0. And they thumped North Carolina State a couple weeks ago, and they're coming off a bye week. I tend to lean with you. I mean, 27 and a half, wherever you can find it. Right now, online, you can find it. DraftKings is at 26. It's coming down already just in the time we've been talking. It was actually 26 and a half when I opened up the page here. But you're right, 27 is a lot of points. And coming off a bye week, Willie Taggart has had 2 weeks to prepare for this team. I think, honestly, Willie Taggart needs a, what do they call those? Quality loss right here, a close loss. You know, a situation where he can somehow get within, you know, a field goal to a touchdown with this team. I think that'll be big. That'll be huge for his, you know, message to the program. But yeah, Clemson, you know, will just kind of, they'll get there. They'll win this game. They'll keep moving. But I think you're right. I think 27 points is a lot. And despite the recent success of Clemson, this game is still a rivalry game in my opinion. So I would like to think that Florida State will get up to play this game. So, all right, Texas A&M is going to host Alabama. I don't know. The 16.5-point spread. Here we go. Another thing I'm talking about, the SEC with 17-point spreads here. Westgate has it at 17. DraftKings has it at 17.5. So Texas A&M, I got to think, is all but out of the conversation here because they've lost to Auburn. They also got to play LSU, and obviously they have the game against Alabama here this weekend. Alabama 9-2 straight up all time, 4-0 at Texas A&M. The last time, can you remember the last time Texas A&M beat Alabama?
No, I really can't.
2012 with a guy named Johnny Manziel. Doesn't seem that long ago, and he's fallen so far out of the shadows. But yeah, the Aggie offense putting up 32.8 points a game. I mean, there's a chance they can keep it with them. 16.5. What do we got a total here of? I just had it 61 right now. The line has moved from 14 to 17 or 16.5, depending on where you find it. I mean, this is the spot where I feel like, Alabama's covered every single time, and the minute I start laying the points, Texas A&M will keep it close. I don't know where to go in this spot. Seems like a lot of points for me. I think Kellen Mond can obviously score in this game. The question is can his defense keep them close?
Yeah, I think that's the big question. I don't think the defense is going to be able to. I think there's just too many playmakers on this Alabama squad.
Yeah, good Lord.
You've seen in the last 5, you've seen exactly what they've been able to do. They've scored the least amount of points with their opener, 42 points against Duke. This team has a lot of offense going for it, and they're able to hold people down on defense. I think that I would eat the points here. I think Nick Saban's going to pretty much just show up and he's going to show out against the Texas A&M team. Especially that Alabama's been fighting. I mean, there's a couple of teams that are fighting for this number 1 spot right now, in my opinion. And that for Tua, it's also a big game. He's one of these front runners for his Heisman, but some people are creeping above him, in my opinion. Some people are getting close. I think Tua needs to have a pretty solid game. I mean, 23 touchdowns, no interceptions this season. It's kind of hard to be a little better than that, but
that is true.
You gotta just show up and you gotta play big right now. And I think to have a really good game against Texas A&M is going to be a really big step for Tua.
Yeah, I mean, you got two defenses here. I mean, the Alabama defense is surrendering 14 points a game, and Texas A&M is surrendering 18 points a game. For have a total of 61, to me, I kind of like the under. I think both teams can play decent defense. I mean, despite the fact that they lost to Auburn, I thought they played pretty well against them overall on the defensive side of the ball. I think eventually the turnovers and the lack of offense by Kellen Mond and the Texas A&M offense was really what did Texas A&M in. But I don't have a real thought process on the spread here because that's just a lot of points. And again, Alabama has the ability to beat you by 40, but Texas A&M has the ability to score that many points too. So I'm gonna trust the defenses in this game, and I'm gonna give you something like 24-16. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. So I think your score is going to be around the 40s, in my opinion. That's where I'm seeing kind of this game shaping up. But knowing my track record the last couple of weeks, they're going to put up 140. So that's probably where you want your money to lie. Let's move.
Yeah. So before I move on,
yeah,
just Nick Saban against the former assistant. In his career, he's 17-0. He's averaging 41 points.
Oh yeah, he kills them
again. I think that's going to be a big factor in this game. Is just Nick Saban proving, hey, I'm still the man, and I'm still better than anyone that's been a part of my program.
That's a fair assessment. I won't deny you on that. I mean, I think at some point, trends are made to be broken, right? I'm going to guess that it's this one. I mean, the thing is Texas A&M's not going to win this game. So no. I'm looking basically, I mean, he's 17-0 straight up. That's fine and dandy. I don't think that record is going to change, but covering is really all I care about. And I might sprinkle some on the money line just in case that 17-0 becomes 17-1. You never know. All right, so we got Texas Tech going into Baylor. Baylor ranked for the first time in 3 years. They are sitting at number 23 right now after big wins against ranked Kansas State and Iowa State. So they got Texas Tech right now, who just finished off Oklahoma State, who was ranked, I believe, number 21 at the time. They beat them by 10, 45-35. They are facing their third top 25 opponent in a row here with Baylor. They had Oklahoma, then they got OSU, and now they're going to finish this three-game stretch with Baylor. Baylor is a double-digit favorite, 11 points. Now, what Matt Rule has done in Baylor has been nothing short of amazing, considering all of the shit that went down in Art Briles' tenure. I just don't know if I can trust that he's ready to be a double-digit favorite against a team that can put up numbers. I mean, you got a Texas Tech team that's averaging 31 points a game, and I just don't know if Baylor with double-digit. I don't trust it. I mean, I don't know who's going to start. Is it Jet Duffy or Alan Bowman? That might be a situation where Baylor has to prepare for two quarterbacks. But they got a great quarterback of their own, Charlie Brewer, who's thrown 11 or more touchdowns with 0 interceptions. He's only one of 3 quarterbacks, the aforementioned Tagovailoa and Oregon State's Jake Luton, which is kind of weird considering Oregon State is a very terrible team. But the fact of the matter is we have an 11-point spread that I don't trust. We got a total. I just lost the total. I hate when this page refreshes. It's stupid. Anyways, here, total 58. What are your thoughts on this kind of game here? I mean, you got Baylor, who's just coming into the rankings for 3 years, laying double digits against a team who pretty much can be competitive with them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think it's a little too much for Baylor to be a double-digit favorite right now. Texas Tech's played tough the past couple games. I mean, they put up a stinker against Oklahoma.
Yes, that is true. Everybody does.
I think that was for Oklahoma than Texas Tech. But as Oklahoma State, they put a double-digit win. I think they've been seeing quality teams, and I think that's going to play a big factor into this. You see these opponents get 2 weeks. You see a certain level of defense, and you're going to improve from that week to week. And I think Baylor having prepared for 2 different quarterbacks is going to be tough. I think that Baylor's going to win, but I think Texas Tech is going to cover the spread.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I think Texas Tech. I think this is another high-scoring game like Texas Tech had with Oklahoma State. Neither team really plays great defense. Baylor plays decent defense, but they haven't played a bunch of guys who they haven't played a bunch of teams with a pulse right now at this point. Texas Tech is 6-0 against Baylor in the Big 12 era when they are in Waco, which is a big number because the Big 12 with Texas Tech and Baylor hasn't been in long, so Baylor has not had success against Texas Tech at this point in their Big 12 history. So, yeah, I think I'm with you. Texas Tech plus the points. Anything on the total I don't really have. This game, to me, feels like it's going to be lower scoring, in my opinion. So I'm thinking somewhere along the lines of like 28-21, I think, is in that spot. So we'll see. It'll be a good matchup. So. All right, we're going to move into the late games, which will start us off with Louisville and Wake. And this Wake Forest team, we've been talking about this on the podcast. Tony Johnson is all over him. He's got futures bets on the ACC. He's got futures bets on Wake Forest, 200-1 to win the national title. And so far, at 5-0 with 1-0 in the conference, he's looking primed, set up for a matchup with Clemson. That's going to be the game for them. I mean, they look like they can get past everybody else in this conference. Louisville, in my opinion, would be no exception. Wake Forest is a 6.5-point favorite in this spot. I like Wake Forest in this spot. I think they've looked great. They look to go 6-0 for the first time since 1944, which is a long time ago, way before you and I were born. I'll tell you that. And Louisville, while I've talked about them, I think Jawan Pass being out really, really hurts them. They're using the double quarterback system, which we both hate, with a sophomore and a freshman in Cunningham and Connolly. I think Wake Forest with Jamie Newman at quarterback has been phenomenal, and he has a great receiver in Sage Surratt, who leads the ACC with 515 yards, and his counterpart, Scotty Washington, is third in the conference with 470, and they both share the lead with 6 touchdowns in the conference. So I don't think anything's slowing down Wake Forest here. I'm probably looking at a 40-17 kind of victory for Wake Forest in this spot.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting is that they both played against Boston College.
Mm-hmm.
So at least they have that common opponent, and you can compare how these two teams are. I think Wake Forest is a really good future, in my opinion. I think that was a good bet by him. Jamie Newman, I think, is one of those. It's just a really good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the best. I think he's one of the best in the nation.
Agreed.
So I think he's going to be able to carry you. This team being home, I think he's going to be able to help them out in this situation. I think they're going to cover this spread.
I agree.
Wake Forest, I think that their offense is clicking. I mean, they're getting 515 yards a game. Combined offense. It's going to be tough to stop their offense, and I don't think Louisville has the defense yet to do that.
Yeah, I think Louisville's definitely coming up, but they're just not ready yet. I mean, they just got their first ACC win since November of 2017. So, yes, they're making a turn on the corner, but they have a tough road ahead, too. They have Wake Forest, then they have Clemson, and then we have we have Wake Forest, Clemson, and then Virginia. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks for them. So, all right, so let's move forward to I lost my thing here. We got Penn State and Iowa, another big matchup. We talked about Iowa earlier in the podcast about when we were talking about Michigan as well. Iowa's obviously a great team on defense. Penn State, another really great team on defense. I mean, you're talking about, check this out. the combined points per game for these two teams is 16 points. I mean, Penn State 7 points, 7.4 points a game, and Iowa 8.8 points a game. This game has 3-2 written all over it. I mean, you have Penn State's a 4-point favorite traveling into Iowa. I mean, that's always a tough place to play. Just ask Ohio State. Just ask Michigan. Iowa is an incredibly difficult place to play. But I like a lot of things about Penn State. I mean, their offense has been well. They've scored 47 points a game on average. I mean, they've beat up a Pitt team. They've beat up a lot of teams. I mean, they have Sean Clifford, who is second in Big Ten with 1443 and third in the Big Ten with 12 touchdowns. I mean, he's not Justin Fields, but I think he can get the job done. I mean, but Nate Stanley is obviously on Iowa. He's been there for a few years. He's obviously a competent quarterback. I don't know what to make of this game because, I mean, we have a total of 42.5, and I really think that might even be, this total should be in the 30s, maybe even the low 30s.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think both of these defenses are too good to get to 42.5. But I also I agree with the Iowa home field thing, but they didn't impress me much last week going up against Michigan when they lost 10-8. I think Sean Clifford is a really good quarterback. I think he's going to be a decent pro when he gets to that point.
Sure.
But this offense by Penn State is just incredible. They're almost at 500 yards in a game per game. Their defense, as you were saying, is incredible. They don't allow anybody to run the ball, and they make it essentially a one-dimensional offense against them, and they're just able to shut them down. I understand why Iowa is such a good team, but I just think Penn State's just a little bit better, and I think a 4-point spread doesn't scare me.
That's fair. I mean, it's going to be tough. I mean, the last 5 meetings have been won by Penn State. 2017, the last time they were in Iowa, Penn State scored on the final play of the game. I think I remember that kind of. My memory refreshes. I remember that pass over the middle. It was crazy. But I think you're right. I think this game is close, but eventually I think Penn State's just got enough playmakers on offense that hopefully the ball control will be what's key to this team. Kind of, I think you're looking at like 17-10, not much, 20-7, 20-7, 20-10. There's not going to be much going around. Points will be a premium in this game, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think that'd be one of the better late games to watch. I think actually all these late games. I'm interested in watching Wake Forest. I definitely want to watch this Penn State Iowa game. And obviously we have the big SEC matchup later, but let's go into this game because I think despite the fact that Southern Cal is a little bit down, Keaton Slovis, I believe, is going to come back and play. I like him better than Matt Fink at this point, so I'm glad he's probably getting the start in this point. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but he's probably going to be the one to get the start. The question I have, again, we have Notre Dame versus USC, 10.5-point spread in favor of Notre Dame. We talked about the Heisman in the beginning of the podcast. I want to ask you, do you believe Ian Book at this point is a Heisman contender?
I think he's a contender. I don't think he's going to get the invite to New York.
He's 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 picks right now. He's looking pretty good.
Yeah, I think he looks good. I think there's just the numbers aren't too big yet. I think, obviously, with how he plays in the next month or so, I think that's going to be the difference maker. But I think as of right now, if you were to say the invite's going to have, I don't think he gets one yet. But I think he will by the end of the year.
Fair enough. Yeah, like I said, the line's 10.5 or 11 points, depending on where you find it. Westgate's got it 10.5. DraftKings has it at 11.5. So finding, again, I think this is another one. Last year in Southern Cal, it was 24-17. So I think we got a close one on our hands. Slovis is completing almost 80% of his passes. He didn't have a great game against BYU, but other than that, I think he's looked really good. I think I'll butcher his name, but Vivek Malapai is questionable right now. If he can play, I think he gives them a boost. But Stephen Carr also Stephen Carr 7 carries, 94 yards against Washington is big. So I think having both of those backs will be huge for Slovis. Again, I like Ian Book. I think they looked really good against Georgia, which even in a loss, I think they should have won that game. But even in a loss, I think they've solidified a playoff discussion if they can run the rest of the table. I think you're looking at a 10-point game right here. I mean, and that's why I think finding the right number is key. I think we're looking at 24-14 or somewhere around 30-20. I think we're looking in those kind of areas. So finding the right number, I think Notre Dame prevails, but I think finding the right number here is going to be key. Like I said, you have 11.5 at DraftKings, 10.5 at Westgate, 11 at Caesars. Somehow this game dips back to if you like Notre Dame, you might want to wait. This game might be sharp money towards the end, coming back towards USC. If you can find 9.5, it might be the spot where you want to play Notre Dame. So my thought process right now is if you like USC, grab them early. If you like Notre Dame, maybe a wait and see in this spot or if it trends back up, then you might be fucked. But in my opinion, I think the way the line's going to move, I think late money is going to come on USC in this spot. And I think if you're a Notre Dame backer, you could wait a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. You gotta find that small number. I think 11 is a little too big. I think garbage time. Trojans are going to put up a touchdown. Just can't put out that. But I really think that USC's schedule has been tough recently. I mean, they had to play Stanford, Utah, Washington in the last handful of weeks. I think this game is basically Clay Helton's last chance of saying, hey, save my job.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I thought the Utah game was, and they went out and beat Utah. I can't figure out what they want to do. I think no matter what, I think Clay Helton's gone. But winning this game would be huge if he wants to at least make a case of trying to stay. I agree with that.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Brian Kelly over on the Notre Dame coaching side. And as you said, Book has been having an incredible year with his 1,200 yards passing. They have really good playmakers on this team. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball well. They put up 41 points a game. I think this is going to be Notre Dame's game to lose. And again, just a late touchdown towards the end can just cancel out that spread at that point. So I'm with you. Try to find a 10, 9.5 to be 10. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to put money on Notre Dame. I think they can run the table, though, and then make an argument, be a 4 to 5 seed or 4 to 5 ranking at the end of the year.
Right. Yeah, they're always the team that creates a wrinkle in this playoff, and they're probably one of the teams that creates the reason why a lot of people are saying we need to go to 8. Because you want to include the conferences. Notre Dame's always, if they run the table, they're always going to be in the discussion, despite who they schedule, and so they're always the team that creates the biggest wrinkle in the playoffs. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, the question will be finding the right number. I think that's my opinion going to be. If you want to play this game, you got to play the cat and mouse game, find the right number. Or a teaser in that spot if you really if you really don't feel comfortable with any number, maybe a teaser would be a good spot in here. All right, the final game on my slate here is UF facing LSU. You got the University of Florida, who just comes off that big win against Auburn, and you have LSU, who has just been running through everybody. LSU, 55 points a game on offense, only giving up about 20, which is really good. However, you have a Florida team who is 5th in the nation in scoring defense, only giving up 9.5 points per game. This is going to be an interesting game. I think defenses are going to be the headlines and the story. But like you said, your guy Joe Burrow, last time he played the Gators in Gainesville, he had 192 yards and 3 interceptions in the Florida win 27-19. Like I said, he's a different player since the Fiesta Bowl last year, and they've scored 273 points in their first 5 games, which is nothing short of amazing. The first question I have, and we'll get into more of the game, is do you believe the loser of this game is out of the playoff discussion?
I don't necessarily think they're out. I think it's going to be a really tough situation for them to get back in. But I think it's virtually they're at. I don't think they're going to be. I think they still can make cases if they run the rest of the season. If they run the rest of the table, I think they can. But essentially, this is a kiss of death if you lose, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think more so for LSU, this would be more of a kiss of death because they still have to go face Auburn. They still have to go face Alabama, of course. So, having one loss here almost necessarily means they're going to have two losses. I mean, I think they have a better shot of beating Auburn, obviously, than Alabama. But Florida, in my opinion, I think even if they lose this game, I think their big game would be against Georgia. If they somehow were able to beat Georgia in Jacksonville, I think that would actually put them in the driver's seat in the East. I mean, who else are they really going to lose to in the East? I mean, you have Missouri, Vanderbilt. They've already beaten Tennessee. They've got, South Carolina left. I mean, there's nothing in the East other than Georgia that's going to stand in their way, in my opinion. So let's see, what do we have? They have, I mean, they've got nothing standing in ahead of them. So, in my opinion, I think that they, despite even if they lose this game, still have. Let's see, they have South Carolina, they got UGA, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and then they got Florida State. So, I mean, Florida State, if somehow they were able to beat them, that would take them out of the playoff discussion, even despite going to the SEC conference title. Two losses. I think the SEC is always that conference. I mean, if a three-loss SEC team wins the SEC, do you just automatically put them in the playoff? I mean, what do you do in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call.
Or I'm sorry, not a three-loss, a two-loss SEC team. I mean, a three-loss would be crazy.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I mean, even a two losses is going to be tough to do that as well. I mean, you have a team like Notre Dame in there, if they can continue what they're doing. You have Ohio. You have Clemson if they continue. You have a lot of good teams that could make the argument, hey, we're better than the two-loss SEC team.
Right. I mean, you could even bring the Pac-12 back into a conversation, especially if Oregon's able to run the table after their loss to Auburn. I mean, Utah with one loss to USC might be a little bit more damaging, but yeah, I mean, the question would be is if somehow, some of these teams, because like I said, if Florida loses this game, but beats UGA and loses to Florida State, I mean, they're in the East as long as they beat Vanderbilt and Missouri and South Carolina. I mean, they're in the Eastern Conference or the Eastern Division of the SEC Championship with two losses, and somehow, let's say they come back and avenge LSU. I mean, now you have a two-loss conference champion. I mean, we saw a year where two SEC teams come in. I mean, do you put LSU in with their one loss in the SEC? I mean, there's just so many. The SEC creates such a conundrum as far as, I will agree that the first five teams are better than a lot of the teams that match up with them, but, you got the Big Ten. You've got Wisconsin, Ohio State, you got Iowa, you got Penn State. I mean, there's other competitors. The SEC would create a conundrum if a two-loss team came out of there, especially if a second team was. I mean, what if you have Alabama who loses to LSU and wins the rest of their games but doesn't play in the SEC title game, and you have a one-loss Alabama team who we've had that before. We had a one-loss Alabama team that won the national title. So I mean, it creates a lot of different scenarios. It'd be fun to see that kind of mashup. All right, let's get back into the game. You talked about Joe Burrow. On the other side, Kyle Trask has been steadily playing solid football, in my opinion. Right now, since Felipe Franks went gone, he's thrown for 881 yards, 7 touchdowns to 2 picks. Again, Joe Burrow, 1,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, 3 picks. We know about that. The spread is 13.5 in Death Valley. That's a tough place to play at night. But what are your thoughts kind of on this game and who will prevail?
I think LSU is going to win. I don't know how confident I am in 13.5 point spread that I'm seeing. I think the Florida defense is going to keep them close, but not enough to the point that I could see them winning this game. I think this is going to be a big revenge game from last year. As you said, the LSU's offense and their passing game in general has just been incredible since last year, let alone the Fiesta Bowl, where you've been saying.
Yeah.
But this offense you touched on it a little bit, 55 points a game. They're getting 571 yards a game. If you had a team that you think could stop them, Florida's defense, I think, is the team that you would have to think is one of the top tiers. But I don't know how well they're going to be able to stop Burrow and just what they have on the receiving side with Jefferson and some of the other players there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is going to be, if you're Florida, do you concentrate on stopping the run and playing a style of defense that, you go zone against Joe Burrow? Because, I mean, he doesn't have, like, the greatest playmakers after Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson has 547 yards and 7 touchdowns, but after that it tends to take a slight decline. Or do you focus on stopping the pass and make Hilaire beat you? I mean, it's a two-headed monster, really, but I think Florida's defensive thought process has got to be to almost let Joe Burrow. I mean, they were great against him last year. The pass rush got to him for 4 sacks last year in Gainesville. It's tough. I don't see the Gators really winning this game, but I think they're covering 13.5 here. I think we're talking about a 7-point game. I think you're looking at something along the lines of like 23-16, 23-17, something like that. I really think that, obviously, I don't expect LSU to put up 55 points against this defense, but I do expect LSU to come out with a victory. I don't know if I'm ready to say this, but I think they may be 1A, 1B with Alabama, and that's going to be a great game down the line, win or lose this game here. But I think we got a close game on our hands here. I'll say LSU 23, Florida 16. I'll say in that spot. I don't know if the offense for Florida is good enough against this Tiger defense, so I'll take that. I'll take Florida in the points in this spot. And as a Florida State fan, I will hope that they get their doors blown in. So, all right. Anything else you got on the slate here that you're putting action on?
Not really. It's really difficult with some of these games on this week's slate.
Yeah, I think
try to find
is
something
tough.
I love. But, yeah, I mean, maybe Boise State 13.5 over Hawaii. That might be.
Yeah, when Hawaii's off the island, they're pretty terrible.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, it's really hard to find a game that I'm really in love with.
Yeah, I think another one I look towards is Utah at Oregon State. The line seems too low to me, which would tend to make me want to take Oregon State in this spot, especially, they got a good quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. Utah's a good team who likes to rely more on the run. I'm looking at maybe an Oregon State, if I can catch that hook, 14.5, coupled with an under bet here. That's the only other thing I've really been looking at. I haven't pulled the trigger on that, but you're right. Not a lot of things I really love other than that. Missouri, minus 12.5. I think they've been really good with Kelly Bryant under center. And Ole Miss is just a fucking train wreck, in my opinion. So I think Missouri, looking at that, maybe hopefully the number will come down. But, yeah, you're right. Not a whole lot I really love. I got to do a little bit more research before the actual start of the games. And especially since a lot of my action's in the early part, I'll probably be chasing losses later on Saturday. So keep a lookout on Twitter for my chase picks. So
yeah, I mean, maybe. I know this is the Friday night game, so by the time people hear this, they'll know what happened. But maybe Miami, Virginia.
Yeah, what do you like about that game? Because now, when they're listening to this on Friday night, this game is already in progress. So give them your in-play line. Let's say the game right now is in the second quarter, and UVA's up 3-0. You still like Miami as a favorite in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jaron Williams, their quarterback for Miami. I like that. I think these teams are evenly stacked, but I think that Miami just has a better offense.
Yeah, this season has not gotten out to the best of starts for Miami, but they do. I think they have a really good team. It's just I'm not really sure what's going on with them.
Yeah, it just seems like they can't get out of their own way at some point.
That is true. Yeah, and obviously Oregon will be starting up here real soon too. If you're listening to this on Friday, they're got 21.5 versus Colorado team who had preseason expectations. But, we talked about Oregon, running the table despite the Auburn loss. If they run the table in the Pac-12, they might be one of the only teams to have a beef with the playoff committee as far as letting a Pac-12 team in. If Oregon ends up 11-1 or a Pac-12 champion, I think you got to take a look at them, especially since their only loss would be to Auburn. And that also depends on how the rest of Auburn's schedule goes, because they still have LSU and they still have Alabama. So a 3-loss, Auburn losing that game might not look as good, even though the 3-loss Auburn would be Florida, LSU, and Alabama. So it's interesting, especially with that game going on right now. I don't think Oregon's going to have any problem with Colorado, but that's just a huge number. It's already gone up 5 points. Oregon opened up as a 16-point favorite. It's already up to 21. So I don't think they'll have any problems with taking care of Colorado, but that's a big number to cover, even at home.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, well, let's put a bow on this weekend, Week 7 of the college football season. We want to thank the sponsors. Of course, 12-Ounce Sports for airing us every Friday night, Saturday morning, and Sunday morning. Get your NCAA picks Friday and Saturday, and your NFL picks on Sunday morning just before the games. Obviously, we want to thank Seat Giant, promo code 12-Ounce Sports for all your discounts on sporting events, theater, and concert tickets. Thrive Fantasy, thrivefantasy.com, enter promo code 12-Ounce Sports for a deep discount on your daily fantasy sports needs. And BetSperts, enter promo code Football35 for a $3.28 per month subscription to their gambling advice website and pick tracking website as well. So you want to catch out those guys. Kind of like the Action Network. They're a startup company. You can track your picks, and people can check your picks and track your picks, and maybe tailor or fade you, which is our motto, depending on how good or bad you do. So, again, I want to thank those sponsors. Now that we've paid the bills, I want to thank Vince Pensabene for coming on and talking with us. He's the host of the Pens Out podcast. What's your Twitter handle there, Vin?
Vin Pensabene, so it's very difficult to spell, but...
I got it right here. Let's see, where is it at? VinPensabene, at Vin Pensabene. He's also a writer for Win Daily. So, Vin, appreciate you coming aboard. And is there any parting shots you'd like to give everybody for this college football weekend?
I'd really UCLA play a lot better. I'm a big UCLA guy. But otherwise, no, I'm just really excited for a really good game, including that late night Saturday game for Florida and LSU.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one for sure. So, all right, that's going to put a wrap on Week 7 of the NCAA. Again, we want to thank Vin for coming on again, and obviously always thank the sponsors. And we will catch you tomorrow. If you're listening on Saturday, we'll catch you tomorrow for our NFL picks. Hopefully Spike, Token, and Tony Johnson will be back in studio. I know Tony Johnson is flying in from your side of the country, so hope safe travels back to Vegas, and we'll catch you Sunday morning. Thanks for listening.